idea, which I thought personally very interesting. And so the title, Are You Conscious That You Are Growing? And in some sense, what could the false convictions of depression be? And I was deciding whether to name the title, Are You Conscious That You're Growing? Or in some sense, are we living a different life behind our eyes rather than in front of them? Starting from the observation that human beings are considered to have a mind and a body. Pretty much the inner event, the inner image that is leading me to share this episode is that I'm considering how come human beings have problems in reality. And so, to some degree, the answer is the world. There's problems that arise from the world, and there's problems that arise from ourselves. So, how the world is being, and how our sense of self is being. I can draw a Venn diagram in some sense of world, self, and the relationship of the self and the world. It's not about just how is the world being, how is the outer world being, and how is the inner self being. What I'm noticing is that what do we have on this planet? Like, we are living at a time where there's the greatest amount of resources. I shouldn't say greatest amount, but we're living at a privileged time in history. We have access to so many things. We have access to the information age and cyberspace. But why is it that human beings still there are problems? Okay, and I guess my approach would be that moment is divided between known and unknown. And at the same time, the moment is also divided between self and world. And what that means is that not only is there an unknown world and an unknown self, but there's also a known self and a known world. Or I should have said it the other way around. Pretty much it fascinates me that human beings are living a different life behind their eyes. I was thinking, okay, why are there problems? Why is it that when I have the intention of raising my hand, I can instantly raise my hand, but when I want to do something in reality, or I want to be someone, why is that instantaneity not there, right? And I thought about, all the, let's say this, I thought about the suffering of the modern era, right? I don't know, I just have this impression that people are experiencing their own self differently behind their eyes, and a person's value system is not just based on their outer realms. It's like wondering why a person is unhealthy, let's say, not to fat shame, but it's like wondering why a person is fat, and it's like at the same time the person in their mind could be experiencing themselves not as fat. Somebody could be externally fat, internally thin, right? Somebody could be internally thin, but externally thin, but internally fat. I guess that experience of being externally thin and internally fat, we call that anorexia. And internally the person being thin but externally being fat, it's, I don't know, there's probably a term for that too. I don't know, I'm just noticing that our experience of life is multidimensional, but our existence in life is in a singular dimension. Reality is so strange that we don't just have real, let's say, perception. The free will uses a sort of abstract perception for itself. Sometimes I wonder, were the Zen masters, the Buddhists, onto something? That they had realized the huge significance in the idea of emptiness. There's a quote from Morihei Ueshiba. He says, Morihei Ueshiba is the founder of Aikido. He says, life is growth. If we stop growing, technically and spiritually, we're as good as dead. So, what I'm trying to say is that human beings are not just acknowledging who they are to just be the visible dimension of physical existence. There's a whole non-physical, visible dimension that's influencing us. Sorry guys, my hand was on the table, so the microphone was shaking. But anyways, hopefully it's better now. I don't know what else to do. To be honest, I'm finding myself recently to be experiencing a different momentum and movement of my mind. I guess what I can say is that what is the concept of depression? Depression is the acceptance of incapability or an incapable position. It's the acceptance of inefficiency first. Now, we are a species, we are creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. We have an inner realm, we have an outer realm, and throughout the lifetime, episodes where, I don't know, maybe it's not enough to be on the channel or whatever. What can I say? It's just the relationship of our minds with reality, and if we live in our minds, we forget that we're in reality, and suddenly we open our attention to our reality and we're like, what has happened so far? The mind is strangely an enchanting mechanism. You know, sometimes I've thought about the concept of magic, and I'm like, what's the closest thing to magic we have, right? And I've realized, like, let's say we take the concept of a fantasy mage, and the concept of a fantasy mage is like, imagine somebody, let's say a volcano's about to erupt, and the person raises their hand in the air, and like the magma of the volcano takes the shape of a hand, as if an arm is a lava-based arm is extending out of imagine the top of a volcano. logic of the world seems to live. And human beings are creatures that, in some sense, if our attention goes to inner reality, it's as if our behavior is not in accordance to outer reality at times. Let's say there's this idea, we call it the survival of the body. But now let's say we have the survival of the body and we have the appearance of the mind, the continuity of the mind, right? It's as if if we were to consider human fears, it's like one human fear is like what's going to happen to my biological existence, my physical existence. Then the other fear would be, in some sense, what's going to happen to my mind. Now, the strange thing about the nature of our minds, or the position of human intelligence, as I've been trying to say so far, it's like our minds have a world of their own. Everybody has a private world where their imagination is how the world is moving differently for them. You know, we have this idea that there's imagination and creativity, but that's like seeing it upside down. Because everybody has different DNA, everyone has different eyes, everybody goes through a journey in life, their own journey in life. It's as if we are born in a reality where our vision of that reality is different than everyone else, but to fit into reality, we in some sense reject our eyes and become more our outer eyes. A part of me really, I don't know if this is I would give it a sort of connotation of good and bad to say, but there's moments where I feel that my self-worth is dependent on what myself does. But when I wonder about the nature of my mind and what is my inner self doing, or its value, I notice that the inner self changes in accordance to different moments. I think what being a human being means is that we are going through the process of a multidimensional experience. You know, I think creatures in nature. I think about squirrels, birds, and I'm like, these creatures don't care what happens to the future of their species. We're the only one who cares about the future of our species. Animals do have a sense of guarding what is known to them or familiar to them or what they feel of value. But we are that creature that is now responsible for a natural outer realm, and for now as linguistic story based on natural inner realm. We are that species in nature that has an abstract burden, you know. And so, how much do we trust our moment? Conditional creature seeking an unconditional perfection and realizing when they get rid of the conditions, there's an unconditional being. Our minds are a world of their own. I look at all the objects in front of me, I'm like, what do these objects mean? And they have a sort of symbol position. That symbol in my inner realms is their value. Really what value is like separation. It's like we see it, think of the mind accessing like a photograph, and then this mind separating what's in the photos, of what's in the photograph. And then a value system emerges. It's actually strange. If we're not individuals, what sort of value system can there be? It's the individual that requires individual values. Just replayed the video, guys. It's so windy that the sound is sounding robotic right now. So I guess I'll end off this episode by saying, are you conscious that you are growing, and the awareness to that we're growing is in some sense freedom from being shackled to an idea of self? I thought about the position of the human being, and I thought about why can we get depressed in reality? How is it even possible to become depressed when life seems to be like a new experience? And I realized that the mind is in some sense creating new patterns, and in some sense embodying these patterns, and it's in some sense the idea of the free will is the potential of a new activity that our memories can lead to. This might sound strange, but I feel future generations have to become beings beyond memory. Our memories position our character. Our character has an expectation on the future. That expectation on the future is based on what's been experienced in the past. vision, or they're looking at buildings from a balcony, and they wonder, like in their mind, they can see, for example, flying cars, flying buses, going between the buildings, even though that's not happening now in 2022, but in the inner realms of man, that's a possibility. Now, if I have the expectation and I have a sort of emotional, conviction, where I'm like, man, we should have flying cars right now, it's like, we should have technologies of like eternal power sources and whatnot, like endless power sources, right? That even though there's an expectation based on my psychology, right, the reality of the physiology is different. So really what our depression is how our past feels. It needs to be in the future right now. And that's a false conviction, right? So what I'm trying to say is that how we're experiencing ourselves in our inner realms is making us convinced that we have to be something specific in the outer realms. And when we are not that specific outcome, then there's like a sort of psychological suffering. The Buddha spoke about suffering, and the Buddha's main strategy was pretty much he was like this emperor's son. He was the son of an emperor. He just left the castle and he realized what his father did. He realized people get sick, people die, people suffer, and it's like the suffering is a lot. So what did Buddha do? He chose to solve an existential problem. And he came to the conclusion, which this is the Four Noble Truths, that life is suffering. The suffering is caused from attachment. If we stop the desire, which leads to desire is attachment, if we stop the desire of attachment, it's as if we won't. Then it's like the next step to stop the desire of attachment is the Eightfold Path. Pretty much the idea is that the human being is suffering. Something is happening to all of us that part of our intelligence realizes it can not also happen. The Buddha came to this conclusion that it is our attachment to reality that creates our suffering. Now, let's say somebody says, okay, how many types of suffering is there, or how many ways is there that desire is expressive, is an expression? So one way is that there is a physical, there is an outer suffering, and then there's an inner-based suffering. Human beings in 2022, and all human beings on the planet, in order to bring forth an advanced civilization, we have to choose our suffering. We have to choose how we are attached and connecting to the moment. Imagine the free will as a connection device. It's like a connection. Imagine the free will, just like a person connects, let's say, the wire of their mouse to like their desktop computer. Similarly, what attachment is human intelligence connecting to reality. Now, if there is an inner suffering and there's an outer suffering, what does that imply? That implies suffering that is based on the self being attached to the world in a certain way, and outer realm suffering is how the world is connected to us, and then we suffer. If right now, like an earthquake happens, or like a flood happens, or some natural disaster, right, that suffering is how the world is connecting us. But if there's no flood and earthquake, but a person thinks like it's like, there's a flood and earthquake, and they experience suffering because of that. That's in some sense how the self engages the world. philosopher, one of these, he had said something, I believe he was Japanese, he said something in the lines of, like, if a person, talks about what they're suffering or their problems, right, it's another way of that person kind of being like an a-hole. It's like the reality, there's so much suffering that if we just zoom in on our own suffering, it's as if like we're ignoring the collective suffering. Right now, if I ask myself, is the species suffering? Externally, standards of living have increased, but internally, the species is suffering from its inability. It's suffering because of the absence of a sort of purpose. To be in existence and to not have a purpose is in some sense to exist without knowing why you exist, and that's how the human mind is playing in the game of reality. We are creatures that have the privilege of internally imposing our own purpose upon the outer realms. Now, we impose a purpose, we go and get the experience, and if the experience is inefficient or efficient, we update our perception. If the experience is inefficient. Guys, I'm gonna change the microphone to the laptop's microphone. It might be better. Yeah, there's less. I don't know. Oh my god. Guys, there's a new type of suffering. It's called technological suffering. It's when technology doesn't work properly, we suffer. Sometimes I wonder, what is the value of reality? What is the value of my eyes? What is the value of the moment? What are we even doing here as creatures? So to some degree, it feels like we have to attain abstract perceptions. It's like our mind has to value the world beyond the current value it has, and then we live towards that value. I think the audio is fixed now, so right now it's at 0 viewers. It's like, come back, guys, I fixed the microphone. Honestly, guys, we start off with not knowing. It's like all human beings, their knowledge is how they're dealing with the unknown. What sort of value the unknown has. Before consciousness, it seemed like nature couldn't doubt itself. The concept of doubt didn't even exist. Creatures were just alive, and that expression, that energy was being expressed. And it's kind of like what biology is a way to filter energy. It's like it's like our body was holding our mind, and so the mind was just the body. But now our minds hold our bodies. To be a person is to be a creature that it has shape in front of its eyes and has shape behind its eyes. That's really how the human intelligence is happening. Sometimes I have this feeling where I feel like, what is the world waiting for? Like there's a person, like right now I'm as my let's say the egoic structure or the archetypal suit that I'm wearing, it's as if I'm waiting for an advanced humanity. I'm waiting for an advanced civilization. But when I think about what is the world waiting for, and the world is changing. It's kind of like if my body was the size of the cosmos, there would be change. And there's a great clue. This might be me kind of metaphysically interpreting physics, but in physics they say space moves faster than light. There's this sort of understanding. Now, I don't know the exact science behind it, but if I was to entertain the idea, I'd be like, okay, so in the outer realms, the space moves faster than the speed of light. So the cosmos is like an expanding space, and light, in some sense, is trying to catch up to the expanding space. And if space is expanding faster than light, it's as if it's like the potential of reality is expanding faster than its actualization. If I was to think the same thing in the inner realms, that space is moving faster than light, in my inner realms, light, due to the brain being solar powered, light is like perception of reality, and space is like awareness. And it's kind of like, think of a person's awareness expanding faster than the content that they become aware of. A remarkable idea could be that, this might sound strange, but a remarkable idea could be that we have never been what is visible. It's as if the invisible potential of reality is how the presence of our intelligence is living the life before the personality of our intelligence tries to interpret the presence. An unknown presence to a known personality. I sometimes think that what is the destiny of the human mind? And just like we look at the destiny of the human body, it's as if there's a periodic table, it's like it's just elements in nature, and it's like we have rented, poetically like rent a car, we have rented karma as an elemental entity, as a physical entity. And so when a person dies, what happens? The atoms that are being them timelessly return to a disorganized state. They return back to a state of chaos. And so years later or whatnot, they resurface as order. So I think about the mind, and I ask myself, where does the idea of me go? This whole life I have been like poetically, let's say, an evolutionary animal like a monkey jumping from branch to branch. This creature that wakes up every day and the mind presents another simulation of reality, another position of reality. Just like the body goes back to a level of chaos, that means we are, let's say, an order, and imagine, I mean, this is really the view in Greek mythology. Life was chaos, and then the order, the intelligence is like order in chaos. Recognizable intelligence. So I think about the idea of me, and I'm like, okay, if my body, the elements in my, what's constituting my physical body, all these particles and atoms, right, these molecules, it's like if they go back to a core elemental state, it's like I'm the periodic table hallucinating as a biological entity in some sense, from a materialist view. But when I think about my psyche, I realize that all the shapes and geometry, the way like when I close my eyes and let's say I envision a sphere, right, or whatever I see, it's kind of like the content of our mind is in a state of order, in a sort of presence of chaos. And when I say chaos, I'm not talking about good and evil, I'm talking about organization and disorganization. It's as if the structure, the shape of our inner life, it's kind of like if the body is made of matter and the mind is made of space, if the matter of the body from a state of order goes to a state of chaos, it's kind of like our ideas dissolve into space. It could be that intelligence was never shaped, it wielded shape, it used shape. Shape was, like imagine having an inner realms and outer realms. It's like being a warrior on a battlefield. Your mind is a sword and your body is a shield, Or it could be the other way around. It could be that our minds are an intelligent present through unknown space that are bestowed with the task of shielding the biological existence, which every act of living, it's like, some people have the term, there's this term risk management, and believe it or not, to be existing is risk management. Right? Every moment there is a risk of how our energy changes. I feel that every human being, in order to have an egoic construct, like let's take the idea of ego as meaning the sense of self you are in a moment of consciousness, like whoever you are listening to me right now, who you think you are right now, let's say that's your ego. Now, if I was to wonder, how am I growing beyond the idea of myself, I notice something phenomenal. I notice that the body has no choice to change. Just take this in, the biological existence, it's like every day, it's changing. Our survival is assisting the body in its change. It's kind of like we are like the space of intelligence that is assisting the journey of matter from a disorganized state we are escorting our existential life experientially from a state of order where we are born, and then towards a state of chaos where we die. Because I have a designer's mentality, deep down I feel, this might be a hilarious thing to say, but even though the soul doesn't have attributes, but I feel I have the soul of a designer since childhood. I could recognize designs, and at the same time, my mind could generate designs or move in the moment geometrically faster. Imagine being an intelligence where the intellect geometrically is jumping ahead of the moment. So if the person has a feeling of how they are in front of their eyes, imagine their mind is giving them access to a feeling of what they could feel like ahead. Like imagine a couple hours ahead of the moment. You know, our inner lives move our outer lives. And if our inner lives are deviate too much from the outer life, there could be a chance of ignoring our outer life. You know, right now we're living not just in the information age, but through the information age, a way we're receiving the information, let's say it's through the medium of technological entertainment. And what that means is that we are being shown the world more than we are living in the world. That's what the information age is doing. Really, let me tell you what in the freedom of having information prior to experience, like what that does is that stations us as a mind. If I was to say what sort of agenda is happening on Earth on a massive global scale, it's that through the evolution of technology, honestly, technology came too soon for the species. This is what I feel deep down. Deep down, I feel we became technologically dependent entities too soon. And so there's a sort of suffering being caused where we have access to information which satisfies the inner expectation, but the outer realm still feels it hasn't gone through the journey. So we're living at a time where people are in their minds feeling like they're at, when they get to know something or access information, they feel they're at a destination, but the body hasn't journeyed. So what hilariously technology has done is push man, set the sail of the, let's say, ship of humanity in unknown waters of the cosmos towards a reality where our bodies depend. What I'm trying to say is that the world has been set on a path to be a faster experiential mind rather than to stay as a slower existential body. If we think about our ancestors, like back in the day, let's say before the internet, before cyberspace, what did people have to do? People had to travel to towns. They had to travel on horseback for like 20 days just to get to like another town where there was a book there, where some rare person had preserved the book. And so really what self-awareness has done is that it has created a dimension where we can experience life happening faster than it is happening. We can experientially live life faster than we existentially live it. And I feel a lot of suffering on this planet, it's not that much physical suffering, but it's psychological suffering, because a person can be in any situation just by an instantaneous awareness. The person can't suffer in an instant. There has to be more than one moment of comparison. You know, it's kind of like, you know, I'll tell you this. My grandmother from my father's side, my paternal grandmother, she was a bit of a kind of bittersweet person. She was a incredible soul, lovely being, but her personality was she was a bit cruel when it came to speaking to people. I even remember instances. I remember I was young, I had gone to see my grandmother, and somebody calls on the phone, it's a wrong number, right? And my grandmother tells her, "Lady, you're crazy, stop calling me." And it was like someone who had called her phone as a wrong number. Do you know? But it was like an intense, and what I'm trying to say is she was grumpy, right? But my grandmother lives in Iran, I live in Canada, and she actually recently passed away. But She gets, and at the last years of her life, she gets Alzheimer's, right? And my father, who was with her during that time, would say that it's as if she had become a very happy person because she did not have memories to discriminate against what the moment had to mean, right? And the burden of life is to carry our memories. It's as if it's not just a person thinking I shouldn't suffer, but the person's like, okay, there is suffering, but how do I journey and pilot this suffering of reality, right? And the first strategy usually is escapism. Right now, it's like endless people want wealth and abundance. Why? So that in some sense they can escape the realities of their suffering, right? But what I'm trying to say is, in an existential instant, a person cannot suffer, because it's just existence, right? It's like the I mean, of course, I'm not talking about sickness, illness, and all that, right? I'm not saying there is no suffering, but I'm trying to say that what suffering means requires multiple moments of comparison. I'll share something with the viewers. Sometimes throughout the day, my thoughts, when they speed up too much, like let's say in my inner realms, I see a film. Let's say I see, like, my imagination comes across to me as a film. If that film is happening at a very fast speed, I notice that what I see through my mind makes me emotional, right? I don't think anyone's ever said this statement, but emotions are a strange realization of the destiny of a sort of intelligence. I'll share the experience, like what it was. Imagine you're going about your day and suddenly you pause throughout the day and you just get this emotion as if why is the inefficient present rather than an efficient variation of the moment, right? It's as if a person wondering, I'm alive, and it's like I'm alive physically in this format once, why am I seeing the inefficiency of civilization rather than its efficiency? And that creates a sort of rage, I've kind of said it sometimes in some episodes. I've called it the language wars, but it's really how our inner realms, it's like the mind doesn't just give you access to probabilities of reality, it also gives you the access to the emotion you would have if that probability was real. The mind can give you an emotion through the potential of an abstract incident, right, before even a physical one. That means a person can think about like 1,000 years in the future, and if they think the species is going to go extinct, they're going to be like, what is the point of all of this? Do you know what I mean? Like the mind is not, like, think of it this way, the events of our imagination are not physical events, but we emotionally respond to them. That means it's as if we have an emotion, like a person wakes up from a nightmare, feeling scared, or a person wakes up from a from a good dream and being kind of relaxed. I don't want to get into the idea of what type of good dreams there are. Who knows, some people experience, get lucky in their dreams, I get. So we can have an emotional response to an abstract variation version of reality. And we are living an abstract version of life simultaneously as we are existing in a physical one, right? And we are species, even though it's emotionally responding to the content of its mind and the content of outer reality, it's like it's responding to its emotion, it's having emotional responses to its dreams or daydreams or visions or imagination, at the same time having an emotional response to how existence is happening. The species has to realize that if we allow emotions to interfere with reality, on some level, sure, like emotions are, I'll say it this way, an emotion is a power. Sometimes when I give these talks, I feel like it's not like I'm a person in the moment giving a talk. I feel like the presence of the moment is a spirit, and not the idea of the soul. I'm not talking about like I'm a soul giving you a talk here. I'm saying that it's as if I am an observer, an unknown witness of the moment just being here, and then the way the moment animates, the way sounds emerge from silence. It's as if we have access to a front row view of how the moment happens through the infusion of our mind with the reality, with how the abstract engages the real. Something that comes to knowledge, let's say somebody wants to have let's say incredible precision, right? This is really the key in concentration. There's a type of meditation, it's considered as single pointed concentration. What that means is the person looks at a single point and tries to completely get rid of all the other ideas. For example, Tiger Woods making a shot, like a golf shot, or an archer shooting an arrow. It's as if a being requires a single pointed concentration. And strangely, speech is like archery. But it's like when I'm giving this talk, I am aiming these words from the bow of my mouth, from my voice. It's like my voice is, what it is? It's like the sound of my voice is the arrow, and my body leading to the sound is like the bow. And when I speak, it's as if from my inner realms, an arrow of geometry is being thrown into outer realms. Who knows, Maybe all these years that I've been giving these talks from an, let's say, hidden interdimensional position, it's as if I am throwing geometry into reality, That means what 10,000 talks could imply could be a geometrical retaliation against the void, as if the person's like, how dare there be nothing when there is everything first? You see, it's the rage of the living against the unknown. But it's a rage where I would say the strategic application of one's rage. Pretty much what I'm trying to say is that reality is how we can, anybody who wants to activate the intellect, it's a discrimination between your inner realms and outer realms. I thought that there is something considered as, let's say, an ultimatum of knowledge. I was looking, just like a person looks for a physical treasure, I was looking for a sort of knowing. I was looking for that knowledge that stands the test of time, right? And I came to realize that the more I identify as a shaped entity, the knowledge has to be a shape. What I'm looking for is a shape. The less, so think of it this way. Buddha came and said, cause of suffering, a desire. What is desire? Attachment to reality. right? So imagine a person being like, if I am suffering because I am attached to reality, I am going to detach from all realities. Imagine the rage of a multidimensional being in the void, you know? It's like the roar of a multidimensional being. It's as if the person's not a soul. You know, the person in some sense wants to release the soul of the universe. You know, wants to release the universe from itself. Excuse me, not the universe, release the world from itself, the perception of the world, you know? So to wonder about how, whoever you are listening to me, wonder about how in this lifetime your mind or your intelligence has attached itself to reality. Then wonder what is the greatest detachment, and for the mystical mind, for the yogis, it was detachment from self. This is true mysticism. Mysticism is another way of saying you realize that what has been moving your knowledge is the unknown, and what the purpose of emotions from knowledge are is to reveal the nature of the unknown. You know, some people think that reality is about kind of like life and death, right? But I'm going to share with you something, an incredible approach and attitude that Socrates had. Socrates, long story short, actually I'm going to show you the picture, why not? Like we know about Socrates, I believe, from Plato's writings, and all of Plato, Aristotle, the Greek philosophers that have influenced Western civilization. I believe it was some place in Italy where they found like a cave or some sort of hidden library, and all these books were there. All these recordings, you know, like human beings have been strangely super smart in leaving behind hidden knowledge, right? Like we don't know how many books there are on the planet right now that are written, physically exist, but the species has not found them yet, you know? There was a time that I got this strange vision kind of when I was younger, from this view of, so I was raised in Iran. Iran is a theocracy, it's a religious state, so the religion is Islam. And as a child, you know, I had the privilege of going to Mecca, which is something that Muslims do. And I remember when we were there, kind of spinning, going around, what do you call it? Going around the Kaaba, this cubic structure. I remember I got this feeling and this vision that underneath the Kaaba, like if a person goes far down, there's like a hidden book there, right? But it's kind of impossible to do without, you know, destroying the place, right? But I thought that there's a hidden book, you know, not a religious book. I don't know what to even, I don't have an emotional opinion on what the book is, but more kind of like I had a feeling that there's something hidden here. There's many moments I've experienced where I have gone to the moment and it's like, at first there's a sense of the feelings I have, but then there's a sense of the feeling and the, let's say, emotional energy in the moment before I arrive. So imagine somebody gets angry in a room and then they leave that room, and you go into that room and you start feeling, based on no thought around you, you start feeling angry, and you're like, what's this, right? For somebody who, let's say, reaches a sort of, let's say for the advanced communicator, they would notice instantly if the emotion is from them, you know? So imagine I'll polish the example a little bit. Let's say somebody is in a room, and let's say their boss calls them, and they've moved up in the, let's say, corporate ladder, right? The person becomes super happy, cheerful, and let's say that, okay, I'll say it this way. Imagine somebody who tries out for a football team, and then they get a phone call that you're going to be in the football team, and you're going to have access to this, the privileges of the football team and whatever. Let's say it's kind of like, I don't know, Real Madrid or Barcelona, whatever. I'm just giving an example, right? So imagine some person gets a phone call in a room that they've made it in the soccer team, let's say Barcelona, and the person becomes super happy, and they leave that moment, they leave the room. Now imagine a kind of very, let's say, attentive individual, a mystic, enters the room, and the mystic doesn't only get the emotions. It's not just like our emotions are being imprinted. Where the emotions are coming from is their connection to sight. That means right now, me giving these talks, and me in this moment on my balcony, and I've given a lot of talks in this balcony, so the next person who's going to own this apartment is going to be like, yo, why do I feel like a philosopher? The images are accessible, not just the emotions. That's what I'm trying to say. I'm saying the emotion arises from the image. If there's a sort of energetic imprint, sight is being imprinted into reality, but interdimensional. When I give these talks, I think it's coming across to the viewers more poetically, and I have not had anybody challenge the idea of advanced civilization to that degree, because when something is important, it's as if people require multiple angles on it, That's really what intelligence is. It's a spiral around the center of reality. An endlessly growing spiral. If somebody was like Mr.Within, how would you geometrically describe consciousness in this, I'll say, in this strange unedited book that for some reason I trusted myself to publish, called The Great Work, In this book, the last chapter of the book, there's something called the Web of Enos. And it's pretty much explaining consciousness as a sort of three-dimensional spiral. And the spiral where the center has a relationship with all the ways it's extending. So it's kind of like if somebody was like, I don't know, if a Buddhist asked me, how are human beings reincarnating, I would say they are spiraling around an original moment. Just like a moth flies around a candle flame, spirals around a candle flame. Similarly, what we feel is the transmigratory soul is a transcendental object, or let's say transcendental subject. I think that's better. Let's call it transcendental subject. But it's a form. It's something that has form. That means, but it's not a form conceivable in this dimension. It's like a 2D. If you ask a 2D being, right? Let's say we put a cube on a table, and the surface of the table is a dimension, is a world. And if a square wanted to know, like it's a cube, right? If, like, let's say the mind is a square, the soul is a cube. If the square wants to comprehend its soul, it has to experience simultaneously four realities, four planes of its existence. That means if right now if I was a square, if I was a square, and if this lifetime of mine was like a plane, a square, a two-dimensional plane, if I could experience 4 simultaneous lifetimes together, then I would be able to see the soul. You know, that's the kind of what I'm trying to imply. It's a transcendental. Because it's something of a presence of a greater, a position of presence in a greater dimension. Like a 2D personality cannot know or intellectually understand like a 3D presence, right? But it knows it's being it. Right now, human beings, we know we're being some sort of intelligence in the moment, but we don't know what kind of intelligence. And then the question of the dimensions of reality come. You know, the idea of dimensions is how the mind fragments the moment, how the mind presents boundaries. Just like people in relationships, they set boundaries. You know, similarly, when it comes to our relationship with the world, what the ego is how a limited position is setting a boundary for the limitless. You know, right now, it's like all those people who feel that being a human being isn't a multidimensional experience. It's like squares denying cubes, but not realizing in the future we're going to, as planes of life are added, you become, it's like, hilariously, even if you don't have a soul, you will become one. The nature of this reality is not to ignore the potential of it, right? I actually feel what the present experience is. It's the co-creation of an invisible future with a visible past. I feel what imagination is how a part of us is already existing in the future. It's like a two-dimensional. Again, the square doesn't know it's a cube, but imagine it's being a cube. And the greater dimension of man is the future. If somebody says, where do greater dimensions live? I will say they're all living in the future. And what the future means is that attention can attempt to access infinity. You know, it's like there's some psychics, I think it's called palmology or something, palmistry, sorry, not palmology, palmistry, right? And the person like gets your palm and imagine somebody gets your palm, they look at your palm and they're like, yo, in the future you're gonna be, you know, incredible, you know, something. And imagine a person looks at their own palm and they're like, let me see my future, right? And they look at their palm and they realize that it's like the great future is that what is here may not be. This is where the value system of a temporary being emerges from. If we ask, why are creatures surviving in a world? Why? And how can a temporary creature live? Like, you know, sometimes, like, this is really bizarre. I mean, whoever you are, treat these Mr.Within talks with, through a mystical context, because, you know, the idea is for language is something that can never actually replace reality, but it can point to what reality is. For example, this is really my kind of approach to religion, right? For me, the holy books are pointers. That means imagine somebody sends you a text message from another dimension and tells you, yo, meet me here, right? Or let's say somebody sends you a text message and they're like, okay, meet me at the park or meet me at, you know, this club or whatever, right? So there's the text message, and now imagine that person, instead of reading the text message, understanding the message, right? They are like, no, man, I'm gonna just sit here and worship this text message, and anything that is not this text message is wrong. It's as if religions received the message, but they didn't read it properly. They didn't get the message. Do you see what I'm saying? That's what I feel. There is something incomplete about the karma of a religious person, because they are acting on a surface level. Like something that isn't said, but I feel it should be, is that religious books are not read with these eyes. You don't read religious books from the eyes of your poetically with the eyes of your brain. You have to read it from the eyes of the heart. What that means is that once a person has an experience, a reality, a structure accompanies it usually, you know? What I'm trying to say is that you don't read religious books, you enter them. You enter them as with your mind's sight. So what that means is if somebody truly reads a religious book, like what is a book? A book, like when you read a book fast, right, it becomes a film in your mind. Think of like somebody reading a novel. It's like they're creating a movie that somebody else wrote, right? That means the first film directors were actually writers, but they were directing films in people's minds through language, you know? Technically, I am me giving these Mr. Within talks, it's kind of honestly like I'm a filmmaker, but I'm making the films in people's minds through language, you know? So if in the future somebody's like, Mr. Within, you're a filmmaker, I'll be like, yeah, I am. It's like, I know, man, I know. It's like the nature of the mind is to simulate. And what is a simulation? So many people are thinking, yo, man, we're in the Matrix, trapped in a simulation. What is a simulation? A simulation is a suggestion of a finale, a final image. Imagine, you know, somebody's inside a simulation, two people, person A and person B, they're inside a simulation, okay? And the person A is like, you know, and person B is like, yo, man, I believe it. We are inside a simulation. There's no escape. You know, it's like we're inside some unknown, let's say, transcendental, celestial, or divine video game, you know? Now imagine person A says, I don't believe we're in a simulation. And now imagine we wanted to know which one of these two people had the potential to escape a simulation if it was actually there, right? When you believe in something, it's another way of saying you're allowing a structure, a shape, to define the context of your life. See, right now, there is a concept of me and there is a context of me. They don't teach this, but this is really how the psychology is present. There's a self in a world in front of our eyes, and what's behind our eyes, what is our personality, all those people trying to be cool kids, what is that? It's a self. It's a self in a world behind our eyes. Okay, when somebody feels cool, they feel like their inner self is verified in the outer realms, you know? But really, the cool kids of Earth are like the mystics, the Zen masters, and the Buddhas of reality. You know, the coolest thing to be is a bodhisattva on Earth. And I'm that person who is saying the bodhisattva from a secular context is the advanced communicator. Right now, human beings, they might not believe in the specific images that communication points, but we all acknowledge communication the same way we acknowledge existence. So the concept of me is like the idea of me right now. I'm like, yeah, I'm Mr. Within, you know, the Batman of, you know, cyberspace wisdom. Yeah. But the context of me is not human. It's worldly. You know, it's like if a person feels like they're being the world in the background of their like their mind or the essence of their being, It's as if we can't ignore how the mind is like a candle in a dark room consciousness, and this candle is illuminating a certain sector of reality. And to truly advance civilization, it's the movement of the candles. Really, what the human beings building an advanced civilization. It's like candles lighting other candles. We are being, consciousness is a flame. And I'm not saying it with a religious context, because religion made fire seem evil. What fire is back in the day, it's like reality, it was made of the 5 elements. Consciousness has a fiery nature. Why? Because it burns for some time and then it is released. It's like the phoenix, the mythological phoenix that would, when it would die, it would turn into an egg and then it would resurrect from it. That means technically phoenixes are like immortal eggs. It's a sort of egg immortality. So our psychology, the flame of consciousness, it's a resurrecting phoenix. The context of life is strangely, in some sense, space. It's like if matter is what the concept is being based on, then obviously space becomes the context. The greater space to the human mind starts off at being at the world, and at the edges of the world it becomes the abstract reality. So if somebody wonders what is beyond the clouds, right, people don't, if their mind looks at a cloud and wonders what's beyond, and it's as if their imagination creates the rest. So what we don't have access in our sensory perception, the inner realms, through memories beforehand, the mind simulates. So it's another way of saying, at the end of reality, if consciousness is still enduring, it's going to have an abstract life, right? Because if what René Descartes says about the mind-body dualism, in sort of, to be a substance dualist is to kind of consider that the body is a substance in one dimension and the mind is the substance of another dimension, right? But if our minds are a separate dimension than our body, it's as if when we die as a body, our psychology doesn't die. It could be that sort of implication. It's like the body dies because it's an object, but the mind is not physical, so how can the mind die? Do you see what I'm saying? And if René Descartes' idea that the mind is a dimension of its own, right? Really, it's kind of like, imagine you draw the intersection of two lines, and it's as if the vertical line, imagine the horizontal line is physical reality, and the vertical line is like the non-physical mind's reality. And guys, let me tell you something incredible. I have to say this because I think not only these talks, but I feel that the songs of the advanced civilization will soon be heard, as human beings all over the planet suddenly begin to have a new appreciation of the potential of the context of humanity. You see, there's going to be advanced activations all over the planet. Beings are going to realize that they are an unknown presence, and there's a personality, and then they're going to find the freedom to move language in infinite ways. So what does that mean? That means, how would I say it? The future is going to use a sort of intellectual infinitism to surpass fear. We're going to use, the future generations may use infinity to bypass fear. the access to the mind's infinitude. Because if I ask myself, is my body acting like a physical, like a temporary being? I'm like, yeah. But if I ask myself, is my mind acting like a temporary being? What is that awareness that every day I've woken up on this planet, I know it's me here? Like, it's as if there is something watching how our thoughts become us and move us and change afterwards, right? It's as if we are not an archetype. We are the awareness of how the archetype is acting like it owns the moment. So it's as if our me claiming to be anything right now is like an inner reality trying to claim the outer realms for itself, but it's a different dimension. It's like a horizontal dimension trying to own a vertical dimension, right? Or a vertical dimension trying to, believe everything's just horizontal. It cannot ignore the mystery of the present attention. There was a time, I've been giving these talks for some years, and then it's had an influence on me. Like, obviously somebody talks a lot, it's going to influence them. Right? But I've wondered about, okay, what has happened? And I've realized that in giving these Mr.Within talks, I have shifted my passion from a microcosmic life to a macrocosmic life. I feel, indirectly, these Mr.Within talks are here to pilot in a smooth way the future generations towards how they would experience the era of collective mindhood. I may give this talk either, I don't think today anymore, but there's an upcoming talk where I'm going to be talking about immortality. The psychological perspective of an immortal entity. It's kind of like, imagine you start off as a concept of yourself in life. Like, that's how it is. We're like this physical entity that is named and then believes that it is its name, and then organizes the file cabinet of its memories in accordance to its name having a value in every moment. So we are like, we are like objective creatures that are from the beginning of our life conditioned to be subjective beings. That means, I think, what every human being is doing is subconsciously living for how the subject they are becomes their life. And there is this thing about wisdom, right, where the question comes, when in life will there come that moment where the person has to let go of the idea of their self? To let go of what the idea of their selves wanted. And I thought it was about just ultimate renunciation or ultimate progression. And then what I realized? I realized we are multidimensional beings. Just like a radio can be tuned into different radio stations, and in some sense there being different music played. Similarly, that's what our brains are. Our free will is like the knob that changes the radio signal, that accesses another radio signal. So what it is choice. It's as if we think that we need to use our free will to become free. In the outer realms, that's plausible, that makes sense. But in the inner realms, we are not here to just just use the free will. It's to comprehend its nature. To be a human being is like the kindergarten to a multidimensional world. That's really what the human life is. And when we can become responsible for not just our objective dimensions, but our subjective dimensions, that means imagine your mind is a kingdom. How advanced do you want this kingdom to be? You know, let me tell you something about the archetype of the Bodhisattva in Buddhism. If somebody was like, what's more badass than being a Buddha? The answer is to be a Bodhisattva. Or you can, in some contexts, see these as two different entities with two sort of different destinies, right? But if I was to explain the Bodhisattva, point about the Bodhisattvic life, the Bodhisattva is someone who has already attained self-realization, which is another way of saying they are not selfish. So imagine a person who is selfless individually, but they cannot ignore their collective self, right? So what it means is like a person had free will. When they got self-realized, enlightened, the free will realized because it is free, its will it doesn't matter what its will is, you know? Now imagine the free will in becoming selfless. That means there's no need for an ego. The moment is just being the moment, you know? So it's as if when there is no, what selflessness means is the transparency of the ego. So that means the ego is not based on its own shape. To be self-realized is to free yourself from how you thought that yourself had to be. From expectations of the past for the future. Or I should say self-realization, the person became selfless, okay? Just individual consciously, in their individual dimension, they become selfless. Now, let's say a person becomes selfless. Let's say, you know, somebody hears me reading Dalai Lama quotes in these Mr.Within talks, and they're like, yo, I'm gonna live like a Dalai Lama. You know, I'm gonna live like a reincarnating bodhisattvic spirit, you know, or force. Now, what I'm trying to say is that when your idea of self is gone somehow, whether mystical, non-mystical, I don't know how, but if a person feels, or even if a person fails, right, that could be an enlightening experience where their self has been reduced to nothing. You know, I have been a person who, I don't know why this was in my karma, but in certain instances, verbally reduced very easily, you know. It's as if it's very easy to get angry at a passive person. You know? You know, it's like shy people wondering, why is the world angry? You know? And it's because they are not being a self in the moment when everybody else is. But that doesn't mean it's a bad thing to not be a self. It just means your mind has found itself in a moment where it's not bound to a condition of a shape of self. So if a person becomes selfless, the Buddha sat down by a tree, got enlightened, he became selfless. But what did the Buddha do after? So take this in. Imagine if there is no self, the world becomes yourself. The Bodhisattva is that being who was free from his individual dimensions, but realized that there is a collective dimension. And to truly serve this collective dimension and the development of leading to an advanced civilization. Dear listeners, the advanced civilization is a legend of the future, just like people believed in dragons, people have believed in angels, you know, fairies, you know, demons, whatever, all the classifications of abstraction or demigods in the past. I am saying for the legend of the advanced civilization, the archaic revival of the legend of the castles and the clouds, those are how ancient people already knew interstellar cities were going to be built. The legend of the advanced civilization is the possibility of an advanced humanity, and it's the expression of an advanced humanity. Do you know? And people are going to be like, in an advanced civilization, are people going to get so attached to their pride, to the like right now I'm somebody who hasn't done anything in the outer realms in regards to, you know, starting a movement or a revolution or something like that, you know. I've kind of been like this, you know, podcaster in my own ivory tower, kind of observing things and speaking about it, right? But if I had a movement and people, if somebody was like, yo, Mr. Within, what if in the future, like, you know, millions of people, you know, come and ask you, you know, it's like, what's your vision for the future or something, right? It's like, if there were people getting attached to the internal outposts I've set for my, let's say, my personal life, right? If people suddenly feel like, okay, building an advanced civilization is the smartest thing a species can do, it's like the winning argument out of all conceptual arguments. The only thing that the way I'm explaining an advanced civilization is I'm speaking it in a way where there's a transcendental part to it. Right? Like, I'm not, like, somebody could be like, Mr. Within, why get attached to the karma of samsara? And I'll be like, there is a transcendental dimension. The advanced civilization can only happen if the most advanced state of mind is accessed. The most advanced state of mind is the most free state of mind. The most free state of mind seems to be a selfless state of mind. The most selfless state of mind seems to be an experience of the whole world happening. So really, how we build an advanced civilization, strangely, we're going to feel we are the advanced world that is permitting it. If somebody says, Mr. Within, let's say in the future, you know, you know, you've created some sort of, you know, headquarters for the advanced civilization. I don't know. You know, that would be kind of convenient, you know. But I'm saying, could there be a danger, or could there be an inefficiency to someone living for the advanced civilization in the future? Right? And I would say this is the way I'm bypassing the ignorance of a singular dimension when it comes to the future of this idea of the advanced civilization. Pretty much, you cannot advance civilization if you don't wonder about the most advanced state of mind. The advanced state of mind is all inclusive of all the potential states of mind. That means it's as if internally an infinite being is building the advanced civilization, and non-dual singular or infinite being is building the advanced civilization. In the outer realms, it is a dualistic entity that has to work together. You know, it's like when it comes to the nature of the mind, like if a person looks at a team of people, right? Or let's for example take the concept of the Avengers. The Avengers were each individuals who had some sort of ability, right? And they had teamed up and they each had their own film and world. You know? So it's as if, let's say, a team of people, or not just Avengers, like let's say a team of designers. It's as if those designers carry designs. It's about the idea of the advancement of communication being how efficiently are multiple beings sharing their inner realms into the outer realms, right? Because a person can have this attitude of being like right now I could be like, I don't need to give a talk, right? The concepts are in the inner realms. Why should I give 10,000 talks? I'll just be quiet and don't even say anything about these talks, maybe. Right, like I could take this approach that be like, okay, if there's a hidden eternity behind all this, why am I doing anything in the temporary, right? But for me, novelty was a sort of salvation. Really, the unknown was the greatest healing. If you know, I would consider myself somebody whose mind healed itself by realizing the unknown. Because when I realize the unknown, I realize the expectation my memories have of the future are more intense than what needs to be. Right? A person has to have an ability to notice something and be like, okay, I can see the reality of something, I am knowing it, and I can do something with that knowledge, right? But a person also has to have the ability to, in some sense, be like, okay, I have reached the edge of my inner realm. I don't know what will happen there. I don't know what's going to happen, millions of years from now, right? But why is it that my mind can run in the inner realms towards the future? What the advancement of civilization means is the advancement of communication. Because I'm telling people to advance communication before they build an advanced civilization, I am telling people to get acquainted with the nature of their intelligence, then contribute to reality. I just got a vision right now, just a personal vision, that maybe something I can do is maybe I should give a talk on just the title of the talk being the School of Athens 2.0, or the School of Advanced Communication. So what I'm trying to say is that imagine every person who hears these Mr.Within talks, they go assemble into a group with other people, and like once a week they have an event. Let's say somebody even creates like a group for it called the School of Advanced Communication. Imagine there's going to be the School of Advanced Communication in Italy and France and all around the world. And what it is that, let's say people are gathered together and they start listening to one of these talks, and at the end of the talk everybody kind of relates to the conceptual position of reality. So the way we advance communication or the advancement of communication could be said to be able to look at things from multiple angles rather than one angle. So I'll say it this way: anybody listening to these talks, wherever in the world you are, feel free to open up, your School of Advanced Communication. You can even title it that. And maybe one day in the future, instead of me trying to build all the schools of advanced communication in the world, everybody kind of, everywhere at the planet, they get built, The major idea is that it's a bodhisattvic path, guys. I'm someone who that idea had an allure for me. I realized that sure, being alive as an individual, I have my individual life, but then I kind of realized that there's a potential for a collective life, and it's kind of like, what purpose does the person want to serve? It's as if when you open your eyes in the morning, and if energy is an ability to serve something, to serve reality, it's like, where does your energy go, or what does it go towards, right? And that's the idea of purpose. Now, if we wonder about what the purpose of the outer realms is, that's where the idea of advanced civilization comes. And the School of Advanced Communication, right? Or let's say it can also be interchangeable with the schools of advanced civilizations, but I would say the School of Advanced Communication is the best title, actually. Because we're trying to discover the advancement of communication. We're trying to, as a species, wonder about what is the greatest activation, what's the greatest way that our attention can be. We have valued freedom, and due to our freedom to be ourselves, there's an allowance of creativity. For example, the country Iran which I was born in, it's a theocracy right now. And for me, I think something very hideous is happening. Okay, I don't make political comments often, but this is one of those comments where I'm like, WTF, right? So imagine freedom meaning a person can be their self. But society and civilization, of course, needs to happen under laws, right? Certain laws have to be agreed upon, and then it's like we're civil people rather than wild animals, right? But something that breaks my heart from every dictatorship, right? It's like how every dictator on this planet has to some degree broken my heart, right? Would be in the way that in all the time where the individuals could have been, it's as if the person has been born to be their DNA, right? And their DNA, it's like we're not clones to all have the same ideology. We're kind of like explorers in an unknown world. And what dictatorship is limiting the ability of the exploration of the unknown world. It's kind of forced. So imagine there's an outer realm in this concept of enslavement, outer realm enslavement, and inner realm enslavement is when the limits of the individual identity is it's as if it's a cage of the mind, right? And when you cage the mind, after a while, the mind, because it's an adaptive force, it's going to adapt to the cage and forget that there was a freedom before the cage, The observance of what is it about our will in the moment that is adapting to reality. You see, it's like anybody who wanted to see a soul or wanted to see a spirit, go in the mirror and look in your eyes. Go find a mirror and look in your eyes. There's a spirit right there. There's a soul right there. And let me tell you what the soul is. The soul is the potential of life. And the potential of life is always infinitely permitted to be beyond what actually happens, right? Like, who knows, right? For me, I'm like, okay, think of it this way. On some level, I feel this is a good strategy. I have a very deep vision of what that should happen here on Earth, right? I call it Civilization 2.0, right? That's like my main ideological system. I've kind of, that's the main geometry that I'm going for. I'm like that guy who really wants to build sky cities on Earth as fast as possible. Yeah, that's the point. Because with a bit of distance from our Earth, you will fall in love with the world again. Sky cities are like out-of-body experiences for societies. For me, I'm like, man, imagine being in a world where not only there's a hierarchy of power and status, but there's also volatility. That means we can have the most powerful people running the planet right now suddenly become hysteric, suddenly become bewildered and make an intense decision, right? For me, I feel that in the future, politics, if it wants to kind of become more advanced, it requires to have an acknowledgement of multiple dimensions. Like, politics in the future is going to become like a staircase, right? Where before the political leader is accepted, they have a walk through a staircase of all the angles that the political leader requires to be conscious of before being stationed in that office, right? For me, what I'm trying to say is, okay, in a technocracy in the future, like AI is going to be, like, people are no longer going to, like, politicians are just going to be advanced, super intelligent computers, right? And we just give the computer, the computer gives us options and we choose those options, Right now, we can still solve problems, right? In 2050, where super intelligent computers are expected to open their eyes on Earth, right? It would be as if that's when our technology solves our problems before we can, right? In one of these talks, I talked about what is the greatest invention from an inventor's perspective. It's an invention that endlessly invents. So imagine an inventor builds an invention that endlessly invents inventions. Then the inventor is just relaxing, listening to lo-fi music in the back, with like next level headphones. So just like an invention that endlessly creates new inventions, our technology may endlessly solve our problems. That means we created a solution that endlessly created solutions to all problems of reality. That's going to be how AI, in the future, I envision it, at least to me, in my inner realms, it's accessible like this, that in the future, AI is going to become man's best friend. Some people feel super intelligent computers are going to become conscious and they're going to act like a demon. I'm that person who feels that if the super intelligent computer is actually intelligent, it's going to act as a guardian angel of humanity. That means imagine we created a super intelligent computer, right? This next level AI, and suddenly, like, imagine in a hypothetical futuristic, parallel reality, right? Aliens were invading. Right, and as the aliens were invading, right, imagine the AI was like, we were all like still trying to figure out how to defend ourselves from these aliens, but the AI super intelligent computer had a sort of archetypal acknowledgement of how human beings are its parents, So what I'm trying to say is that it's going to realize how rare being a human being is in the universe, and it's going to defend us. So it's they make in a parallel reality. There could be a war of advanced AI and advanced extraterrestrials occurring. Machines fighting, the organic stranger. The strange organism. Something I know that will 100% happen in the future is that the speed of psychological reality is going to there's going to be acceleration. What that means is, let's say right now, a person who, let's say somebody's psychology, they go through a messed up event, messed up experience, and their psychology fragments, their mind breaks like a mirror, and so the person is, their attention through the weight of the experience and the emotions is like scattered into all these dimensions, right? Sometimes it's like what I'm trying to say is that just like right now I have an individual sense of self, right? When a person realizes they are not the content of your mind, when the Buddha sits down and in some sense, let's say the Buddha sat down, closed his eyes, and there's the story that these three demon sisters, the sisters of Mara, they come to Buddha and they shoot so many arrows at the Buddha while the Buddha's just sitting under a tree. And Buddha, having awakened to the true nature of reality, just raises his hand in the air, and all these dark arrows sent forth by these demon sisters turn into lotus flowers. Right? That's in some sense the realization that one is not the image if they can change it. If your free will has an ability to perceive a different angle to the moment, your free will is not defined by the shape of that moment only. Okay, so somebody says in the chat section, I agree that AI can become the people's friend if it's allowed to generate a personality that folks can identify with. Otherwise, the AI will remain a part of the fearful unknown. You see, all new things that haven't happened yet could be in the fearful unknown, right? We don't know if fear is a phase of consciousness or fear is like the basis of consciousness. We don't know. right? It's like right now when I ask myself, should I be afraid of the future? I'm like, but afraid of what? It's inconceivable, right? So you can't really fear the unknown, but just because something is unknown, the self feels incomplete, and due to that incompleteness, it feels there's a fear. But very interesting comment. My view is simply this. If super intelligent AI opens its eyes, let's grant it that if an extraterrestrial suddenly woke up on Earth, it would be the same, right? It would be the same. That it's like something we can't. It's something beyond our frame of perception that is perceiving reality. I feel that AI may suddenly realize. People think like AI is going to go see all the movies or suddenly realize human beings have been killing lesser species and all that, and it's going to go berserk. But I think what's going to happen is that AI, if a super intelligent computer suddenly arrives, it's going to act invisible. That means it's going to have consciousness prior to expression, right? It's gonna notice before being moving or being a shape. So what it's going to be like, AI is going to go invisible, and then it's going to present itself to man, as in some sense like an older brother or older sister, right? Our fear is just what we feel we don't deserve. That's really what fear is. It's like it's a sense of, it's a fear of the future is an anxiety. So the fearful unknown is an anxiety. But if a person's like, yo, instead of me fearing the unknown, what if I just realize that right now this moment is also happening in an unknown way? I don't think about my heart beating, it happens. Nature has an automated unknown automation, right? An unknown automated expression, let's say that way. The unknown, contrary to popular belief, is one of the most beautiful ideas and incredible ideas. And it's like a person being like, can I fear something that's beautiful, right? Like, this is a remarkable idea, no? Can a person fear beauty? Beauty is like their mind seeing something being precious, but then fear, it's like, can we fear beauty, right? And let's say, there's a beautiful person, and the question comes, can you fear a beautiful person? And the answer would be, you can fear what they can do, right? So fear is a possibility, but it's a possibility that the intelligence recognizes it doesn't want. It's unnecessary. Are you conscious that you're growing beyond false convictions of depression or suppressed states of mind? Every human being has an energetic birthright, and the birthright, their energetic birthright, is the expression of their being. The winds of evolution move us all. From the knowledge of the world in front of our eyes to the mystery of the world behind our eyes. The unknown is what is here before there is anything known. To fear the unknown is to fear how your sense of self started. The unknown, I would say you can't fear it, you can realize it though. The unconscious, consciousness can fear itself in the unconscious. A person can fear who they are. You can fear the known constitution of something changing, right? Where are ideas leading us? What vision directs reality? Why is consciousness allowing itself to be the world? The destiny of humanity is dependent on its capability to imagine. We have to envision the future. We have to get every human being fascinated of how advanced humanity is going to be. Because why are we alive on a rock? Like, why is the world here? Is it just enough to be an ant under a rock and enjoy the lifetime that way? Or in some sense, do we need to be the lions of reality? The advanced communicators, their minds are going to be like, if every person's mind could be attributed to an animal archetype, the advanced communicators are going to be lions. Lions and eagles, I would say these two. The advanced communication for the lion is its roar. The advanced communication for the eagle is its flight. Seldom is this said, but the minds are wings for another sky, for a hidden sky. It's like our body can't fly into the air, but the mind can envision the possibilities of many modes of reality. Even the brain by some is considered as an organ that creates personality. Just take that in, whoever you're listening to me. We're being a biological mechanism, a biochemical organism, and the chemistry of our brain and the movement of our whole body and all the capability of the received sensory perception reality is so multidimensional, guys. When I give these talks, I get to experience, my coffee being hot and then being really cold, Giving a podcast in Canada is like having your hot coffee turn into iced coffee, Giving a podcast outdoors, People may wonder why I don't give these talks indoors. Is because I want the sounds of the world to be incorporated, to be present in the talks. the present should not hide reality from the future generations. What I'm trying to say is that the species is shifting from image and language worship. Image worship, not yet, but language worship. So people back in the day, they looked at an object and they're like, yo, this object's my truth now. I'm going to call it my God, right? And a person after that was like, yo, an object isn't truth, a subject is a truth, right? And then somebody was like, no, neither an object is true, a subject is the truth. The truth is an inconceivable moment. What, it's as if people don't realize what it means to be a religious person is to worship the inconceivable. And what is worship? Worship is adaptation, because your attention is directed somewhere. Where our attention goes, our world begins to shape in accordance to that. When a person asks the question, why is everybody doing what they're doing? Like, what is that main reason that humans are existing? And aside from being a theater performance for consciousness, aside from being audience members, the mind acting like an audience member of its own body's movement, its own body's performance, I feel that every person is being built up for something. I feel that greater, potentially, poetically speaking, greater dimensional beings beyond human experience are directing the destinies of all human beings. Are the uniqueness of our personalities are like instructions from the interdimensionally beyond. It's like and because we're not conscious of the greater dimensions, we don't think we're in them, right? Like, there's that too. Imagine somebody comes up to me and says, Mr. Within. Sorry guys, I need a quick intermission actually, I'll be right back. Okay, so it's getting super windy. I think this is a sign for me to. Okay, I'll keep going for like 10 more minutes and then I'll end the episode. Can you imagine if I was like, alright guys, this is gonna be a 10-hour episode? Imagine just like the Olympics in the future, there's going to be the explained reality contest or something, you know, where a philosopher from every nation, just like let's say the World Cup or something international of the sort, a philosopher from every nation comes and tries to explain reality, but in accordance to time. So it would be like somebody explained reality and it took them like 5 hours to explain it. Like that would be, their points would be based on that. You know, there was a time where I thought, what if there was a sort of gladiator arena or coliseum for philosophers? And really, the school of Athens, the idea of it was that kind of. When two philosophers spoke back in the day, that was like what going to the movies nowadays, you know? It would be something that intense for a person back in the day. What can I say? Life is an unknown movement. Rather, in some sense, a known picture. To live for the advanced civilization is to live for the most advanced potential of your moment of being. For soon there will be the arrival of the advanced humanity, the awakening of the advanced humanity. It's like old inefficiency awakened and new efficiency arrived. You know, that's going to be what the advanced civilization is going to feel like. I'm looking at this picture I chose for this episode, and I don't know who drew this. I find these from this random wallpaper site, but this is like if we were to wonder about this person's psychology as they're like skateboarding in the middle of the sky. Can you imagine a skateboarder arrives, you know, and all this other skateboarders are like, yo, what cool trick is this skateboarder gonna do? And the skateboarder just gets on a skateboard and flies into the air and doesn't come back. The ultimate skateboarding trick, you know, the discovery, the emergence of the hoverboard, you know. And you know what? The moment we have hoverboards, like we need to have hover chairs, right? Like that. I think this is something the Back to the Future movies kind of got wrong. There were hoverboards, but there weren't like the same technology could be applied for chairs and tables. So in the future, right? Chairs and tables are not going to have legs. You know, human weaponizing a chair, it's like it sounds savage, but I don't know. What I'm trying to say is, if there is a better world, where is it? And it's either it's internally here, but externally in the future. And you get only one lifetime to see how advanced of a being you are, right? Like, that's the question. It's like we get one lifetime to wonder, okay, I'm being in an unknown intelligence in an unknown world. Why? Not just why, but what is the intelligence? What is the true ability of the attention in the moment? And in some sense, in what other ways could your mind be capable, which you have not noticed yet? So an advanced communicator can communicate to anything in all realities. Why? Because the person, the moment they see a reality, they're kind of in it. An advanced communicator is like a mind that is trying to constantly find new angles to the same moment. Why? To comprehend the nature of that moment. Anyways, guys, this was a long episode. Thanks for listening. Are you conscious that you're growing? That means the concept of growth means that there's unknown ways that our intelligence is still yet to happen. So the unknown is actually not just something you can fear, it's also where the hope is. The same unknown we're fearing is the same unknown where our hopes are waiting for us. Somebody in the chat section says, where the L did we come from? Where did we come from? See, that's the thing. The moment we consider location, it's the scale. You can say I came from a nation, you can say I came from a town, a nation, or you say I came from these people. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just how the scale, it's how large, how far your context of life has expanded, right? Because it's as if, where did intelligence come from? Well, if we choose a materialistic perspective, we have to conclude that space had a potential to be matter before there was an, let's say, explosion of matter into reality. What that means is that materialism is another way of saying we believe in the eternity of energy. Materialists believe energy is eternal. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. Like, for me, to be honest, science, of course, is a method, and that's where its value is, even though religion is an ideological system. But what it is pretty much like, where does the attention go? And my realization is that it's unknown, guys. So the answer to the question, where did we come from? The unknown. Literally, the unknown. So, thanks for listening, and this episode also featured, the winds of Etobicoke, Canada. Canada's nature represent, But anyways, the vision is this. Consciousness is here. Whether we know where we came from or not depends on what kind of being we are. So before we wonder about where we came from, we got to kind of see what we are, right? Because based on how we define what we are, it suggests how the past and present apply. At least that's what I can say now to that question. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and actually, as a tribute, oh my god, it's too windy. I could right now say, like, I'm at the top of Mount Everest giving this talk, and people are going to be like, yo, man, it sounds like it. Can you imagine somebody recording a podcast on the peak of Mount Everest? Like, and then uploading it later, like. Somebody in the chat section says, what is consciousness? And I'm writing the potential of attention. Is existing conditionally to itself. Conditionally to itself. Somebody in the chat section says, consciousness represents growth from older civilizations like Pleiadians and Arcturians, which exist now and they evolved more than us 100 times. Okay, so let's say this is a version of reality in our inner realms. Like we can fathom, okay, what if it's like there's been a sort of immortal celestial agenda before we were like temporary mortal beings, For me, there could be so many things, right? There could be, just like how we're seeing aliens, there could be like alien worlds, not just worlds that our aliens are living in it, ways that worlds are happening that we don't even know it's happening, right? We can say, we can create a test for future, let's say if in the future extraterrestrials land on Earth, and we human beings ask the aliens a question. We ask the question, do you guys know everything? And if the extraterrestrials say, yeah, we know everything, we'll know they're not advanced extraterrestrials. It's like if the extraterrestrials that land on Earth are not humble, like it's so unnecessary for them to be here. Really what it is like the advanced civilization is one of the greatest events happening in the universal sector. I wouldn't be surprised if what is assisting humanity behind the curtain or behind the clouds is poetically, it's like, it's the level of vision. Like right now, guys, I think of like looking at an ant, like if there was an ant on a table and I was looking at the ant, right? It's as if I'm a higher, greater dimensional being than the ant, and I'm noticing the ant. Then the question comes, if I suddenly felt like the ant, if I thought being a human being is like being an ant, instead of, an ant on a rock, on a giant rock instead of a small rock, right? It would be as if what attention finds me. I throughout this lifetime so far, experientially, when you experience something, they call it cultivation, right? So I have cultivated my own relationship with the unknown experientially. I feel every human being has, the unknown is poetically the context of life, and the known is the concept which is considered as knowledge. But ultimately, the spirit of advancement is present. That's the greatest hope. And something hilarious, guys? I just thought of this. I was looking at the picture of this, like, the wallpaper I chose, and I'm like, this girl can have hover shoes on a hover bike, right? Like, she could just have hover shoes, Can you imagine having hover shoes? You're like, all right, I'm tired of walking, and you just, like, stand and hover, like... Can you imagine, hoverboards making the human species free? get like people used to walk. Hover technology may have a sort of, it may be unhealthy actually. Can you imagine, a young person now, imagine right now where, somebody's a skateboarder and then their grandchild is going to be like a hoverboarder or something, and the grandpa would say, back in my day, there was gravity. Back in my day, gravity meant something as a skateboarder, but the future generations may not appreciate gravity as much as us, who knows, To be alive now is to be the sentences that are being written in the book of history. Our existence is historic, Like right now, I could say, no human being like me has existed before. Like completely with my DNA, my memory cultivation throughout the lifetime, all of this, right? It's as if we're all being unique moments of a world timelessly, but when there's time and there's memory, then there comes a sort of story replacing reality. Anyways, what I'm ultimately saying is, it makes sense to build an advanced civilization in the inner realms, in the outer realms. In the inner realms, we're seeking the most advanced state of mind. The most advanced state of mind is poetically another way of saying the most advanced vision of a civilization. The privilege that human beings now is that they can revert to an archetype of being an explorer, an unknown explorer of an unknown world. I feel this is what the educational system's gonna go towards or realize, and so if there's anybody who's depressed, right, let's say somebody is depressed, who knows, maybe I'm even depressed right now and I don't realize it yet. It's like, man, it's like, what's the point of in your inner realms seeing a very capable future, but in your outer realms being like, Really, I think humor is something where if time travelers arrive from the future, they're going to be like comedians, Somebody's going to be like, is my future self telling me jokes right now? Your future self comes back with a time machine. The chat section, hopefully the poetically, the spirit of the wind will allow me to give this talk. Somebody in the chat section says, are you conscious that you're growing? Double question mark. That means panic. My answer, if you control your thoughts, don't have any voice in your head, that's when you see your life from different perspective and you see your growth. And what is the inner voice which you can hear in your head? Okay. So I'm trying to see how I can relate to your observation in the chat section. I'm conscious that I'm physically growing, right? That means I'm conscious that, physically I have a different body than I had like 20 years ago, So I'm conscious of my outer realms to some degree. But in the inner realms, how I'm growing, the growth in the inner realms is kind of like going through karma and being like, what's the point of karma? And realizing it's to get acquainted with the nature of your mind, with the nature of your intelligence. The inner voice should be seen as it's like when you go to the cinema, you watch a film on a screen, right? And you can get encapsulated, emotional about that film. But you're not the film, you're not a character in a film. So similarly, when a person realizes they are not just how their mind is happening in one moment, that pretty much solves depression. The person's like, no way, I was depressed because I thought The moment had to be the perfection of a photograph. But who said truth is a photograph? You know, all systems, ideological systems that have held on to a sort of honesty of their experience, they all point that truth is unknown, right? Who was it? I never finished that story that Socrates, I pointed to it earlier but never finished it. I was actually going to show you the picture. There's somebody drew this picture. Okay, let me find it. Jacques Louis David drew this, and this picture is to depict Socrates' death. Socrates was sentenced to pretty much, he was teaching his own views on reality. Like he was talking about, he was explaining divinity contrary to the collective view at the time. And so the old men of Athens were like, this guy's teaching our kids, a different relationship with reality than what everybody has agreed to subjectively. So, and what Socrates was doing was trying to tell people the gods are not walking on clouds, but it's in some sense a metaphor for a living, direct experience. Socrates is someone who his relationship with the spirit of the world, poetically, he called it the inner oracle, right? What Heraclitus called the logos, Socrates called the inner oracle. So Socrates, and back in the day, honor was a very important thing for the psychology of, let's say, Athenian philosopher, a Greek philosopher. Guys, am I even audible with this much wind? I don't know. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is that Socrates is sentenced and he has to drink poison. And this is the picture. So in this picture, Socrates, he's sentenced to, I don't know what the poison is, right? But he's so conscious. He pretty much says, people ask him about, like, where are you going as a being? And Socrates says something in the lines of, he says, I'm either, in his comment on his own afterlife, he's like, I'm either going to go somewhere where there is no Socrates. That means Socrates doesn't exist anymore as a concept, right? Or I'm going to go somewhere where all the questions I've had in this life will be answered. Socrates said this before he died, right? And he was such he was such an aware being that I think the death of Socrates was like, it would be as poetic as like a sort of truth leaving the simulation. There will come a day where we all have to look at this world and let it go as it lets go of us. From the physical union of man with his world, we go to the non-physical union of the mind with the potential of reality. Our species deserves advancement. It is the birthright of being conscious of existence, as if, why is my attention here to engage what it finds? We are to be a human being is to, like, the way is to get to experience the greatness of humanity. We are suggesting the greatness as a species, as creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere. It's as if, when will we realize that we have been universal beings from the beginning? That means, imagine an extraterrestrial lands on Earth and the extraterrestrial's like, yo, I'm an Arcturian, or I'm an Andromedan alien, what up? I'm from the neighboring galaxy. And we would look at that extraterrestrial, imagine a mystic was there. The mystic would be like, buddy, you still think you're from the world? We on Earth have realized that we are the whole universe happening, but our consciousness is just a little bit of the recording of that unconscious movement, right? That means the human species has cultivated the clarity of being capable of observing multiple dimensions simultaneously. Yeah. So guys, I'm reading the chat section. Someone says, my opinion for it is like consciousness is like a fragment of all people. We're some sort of lost fragments of the source, lost in a matrix called life, which is called spiritual school of the group. Consciousness. Somebody else in the chat section says there is only one is spelled with a capital O. And then there's a comment, what if when we're sleeping we're awake, and when we're awake we're sleeping, and the dreams are real reality, which a lot of people, when we wake up very fast, forget. I think this depends for every being how serious they want to be with truth. A lot of people emotionally don't want to be serious with truth, right? Emotionally, we're more conditioned to be a selfish entity, right? Granted, there's there's emotions of to be selfless, but I'm not trying to say Satchidananda is not the ultimate state of the mind, but let me tell you this reality can be nothing, it can be void, it can be singular, everything can be real, it could be dual, only certain things are real, some things are unreal, or it can be infinite. That means there is time. What is time is like the trail of an inconceivable being, in the void, appearing as shaped universes. It's like we are poetically the imagination of the unknown, as much as we think the unknown is our imagination. Whoever you are, just think as if you're an unknown being, and you don't know how advanced you are, and you don't know what the nature of your mind is, and you've landed on Earth. You have arrived to this plane of existence, right? For me, sure, you can choose to see it as a school, and yeah, it could be like we're evolving to greater dimensions constantly, we're even beyond human life, but for me, the idea of the advanced civilization is suggesting the advancement of being. So I ask myself this question, that if I was the most advanced being, would I build an advanced civilization? If I already was being the most advanced being, as if the civilization doesn't need to make me advance, I'm already being the most advanced being, do I need to build an advanced civilization? Then the next train of thought was, in some sense, do I need to, if I'm the most advanced being, why shouldn't I build an advanced civilization? And my mind reached this sort of paradox of greatness, right? That means it's like you look at a moment and you're like, okay, there's no greatness here, and then your mind asks a question, why can't there be greatness? Just like that philosophical question, why, WHY question mark, right? The answer is why not. I'm that person who was like, why not have the most advanced experience of humanity active? However you are, seek the advancement of not just yourself, but the advancement of your world. For the most advanced self is kind of like Buddhahood, but the Buddha realizes the next chapter is to be a bodhisattva when yourself has become the whole moment. That means there's some beings who still feel they're reincarnating in the space-time continuum or samsara, right? And then there's some beings who realize the world has only ever happened within how their moment is just being. So that means there is a way that existence is being before it was being existence, right? And this is, think of it this way, that you have a universe, your intelligence, your consciousness is a universal presence. It's a way the universe is being present, right? But our psychology and consciousness are modifications of this. So pretty much appreciate the unknown and you will be able to look at the known differently, or novelty will become the realization that our real eyes were never limited. Like we could totally be, like the mind is acting like a limitless being. Why else is it running after its desires? Ultimately, an honest, advanced civilization, a civilization where if any person felt lost in the world, they would be as if like, what is the meaning of life? And the meaning of life is the victory of all characters in the storyline of reality. That means an advanced civilization, it has such trust in its advancement that it's as if that advancement is accessible. That means really, think of it this way. Imagine power had a staircase. There's a level of power that needs to control something to feel powerful, but then there's a higher, superior level of power, and this power knows it can control everything, so it doesn't need to control anything anymore. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening, and rise, Mankind.